good morning, Will and Kent. I really appreciate your time. I want to talk a little bit about Tom Phillips and what he means to both of you, but I'd like you both to introduce yourselves to our group. So, Will, why don't you start?
My name is Will Messenger. I'm the executive editor of the Theology of Work project, and we write and teach about what the Christian faith has to do with ordinary work. Tom Phillips was the founding chairman of the Theology of Work project. So my present work is a continuation, really, of his dream that every Christian who works, and that's pretty much every Christian, would be equipped by the Christian faith to do their work in a manner of service and pleasing to God.
That's wonderful. Kent, could you introduce yourself too, please?
My name is Kent Kusel. I've had a kind of bifurcated career. I have 20 plus years in what I call the traditional marketplace, mostly in commercial real estate and technology, and another 20 plus years what I call the kind of faith at work movement, integrating faith and work. And currently I'm a principal in a company called bestresults.ai. We're bringing artificial intelligence to the business community. And so it's my privilege to be here. Tom has had a big impact on my life for many years.
Maybe you could start us off, Kent, by telling us a little bit about your interface with Tom Phillips.
I have a story that I think is worth telling, and that's my first chapter with Tom in early 2000. I was interviewed for a position at Marketplace Network, my first attempt to be in the Faith at Work movement. And Tom was the head of the search committee. So I met him for the first time and he interviewed me for a position. I was pretty excited. I never had been out of the traditional marketplace. And so anyways, I went to the beauty contest and he arranged for his country club to be available to me and to the board of directors for Marketplace Network so I could tell my story and hopefully be chosen as the new president. And so I did my presentation, answered all the questions, and walked out so excited, only to discover the next day they chose another candidate. Needless to say, I was quite disappointed. I felt this surely was my calling from God, but apparently it wasn't. So I left a couple days later and went down to Florida to visit my family. And I'm sitting there a couple days after arrival, and my father comes out in the front yard and says, "Kent, there's a Tom Phillips on the phone and wants to talk to you." I thought, how in the world did Tom Phillips know that I was in Florida, let alone at my parents' house? But nevertheless, I got on the phone and he says, "Hi, Kent," in his normal monotone. "Tom Phillips here. Calling to let you know that the candidate that we had chosen to be the president didn't work out. And so I'd like to let you know that we've chosen you." I said, "Wow, Tom, that's exciting." I said, "Tom, I'm not sure I want to do this." He says, "Why is that?" I said, "Well, if I wasn't chosen the first time, then I guess there must be some board members who don't like me, and it'd be really tough to be the president of a not-for-profit and not have your board behind you." He says, "Oh, no, Ken." He says, "That's not a problem because we liked you, both of you very, very much, but the other candidate just had some experience in some areas that you didn't. But no, we'd love to have you." I said, "Well, tell me think about it and I'll get back to you." So I spent a couple of days praying about this, and I called him back and accepted the position. And that was the beginning of quite a relationship with him.
Okay, thank you very much. That is an exciting story. Will, would you like to share your interface with Tom Phillips as well?
It starts with a story just a few months before Kent's. In late 1999, I had just become the executive director of the Mockler Center for Faith and Ethics in the Workplace, which is a unit of Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. I was new in that job. I'd been on the job like 2 days, and I got a call from Tom Phillips. I didn't know his long history with Gordon College and Gordon Conwell at that time. And he said, "When does my class start?" I said, "Well, Mr. Phillips, I don't know anything about that. But if you could do a class for the Mockler Center here at Gordon Conwell, I would just be thrilled with that." And so he had been in conversation with the seminary about this new position. He was so eager to lend his experience to students. So I created a seminar series. It was outside the regular curriculum because we wanted local pastors and local people to be able to come to it, as well as students. And he taught for 8 weeks about the intersection of Christian faith with work from the perspective of a CEO. Boy, if you're trying to attract people to a class on faith and business, and you have a CEO of a major internationally known company, you volunteer to teach the class, that was a real draw for students. I think they were expecting to find somebody strong and demanding and maybe a little arrogant. I know whatever picture you might have of a CEO. Sometimes they were a little disappointed to find he really wanted to converse with them. He didn't want to tell them how to be a CEO. He wanted to converse with them about what it means to follow Jesus Christ in the world of business. That was his humble spirit made such an impression on me as a young leader.
That's wonderful. And that was 1999, so that was really 25 years ago. And we lost Tom, I think, 6 years ago. Kent, what's your next story relative to Tom?
When I began this new journey, which is very foreign to me, having come from the corporate world into this kind of faith at work, and Tom was just one of 11 board members, but he just took it personally upon himself to really step in and walk alongside me. I would say there's several roles that he played that really impacted me. First and foremost, he was just a good mentor. He really had a grasp between the bridge between the marketplace and this not-for-profit. So he was keep me out of trouble with my board, prepare me for meetings and so forth. And then he was a spiritual mentor. He was realizing that this ministry was supposed to be dedicated to helping people integrate faith and work. And, I had some experience, but he realized you could probably use a little help here. So he stepped in with that. He was also a very fully engaged board member. No one put more time and effort into it. He had an office at Raytheon as a former CEO, beautiful big office and access to the entire corporate headquarters. And he said, you know what? I want all the meetings for Marketplace Network to take place here if you'd like to have our place. So we went to this beautiful facility and would use it for whatever kind of events that we had. He would open up his network. We needed speakers for Marketplace Network, and he knew a lot of people. I mean, the most notable guy that everybody wanted to have was Chuck Colson, and Tom played a role in helping Chuck become a follower of Christ. And so when he called Chuck and said, hey, come speak for us in Boston, which he did on multiple times, he made no qualms about using his reputation to help us as a ministry here. And then I got to watch his generosity, not only generosity to help fund Marketplace Network, but the Tom Phillips School of Music was open at Gordon College, and he was a huge factor in making that happen. I was around when we changed the name of the Mockler Center to the Mockler Phillips Center, because he too got behind that. And lastly, he became a personal friend. He didn't separate his personal life from his quote business life. So I've been to his home several times. He even took me to his summer home on Swan Lake. I just wasn't used to a guy of his stature that would take me to McDonald's. And he just opened up his life to me. So it's very special.
That was a great privilege. And Will, what about you?
The first time we had this class or seminar that he was teaching, I introduced him, Tom Phillips, retired CEO of Raytheon, and some of you may also have heard of him as the man who led Chuck Colson to Christ. And after the first session, he said, well, thanks for the introduction at the beginning, Will, but never again introduce me as the man who led Chuck Colson to Christ, because no human being ever leads anyone to Christ. Only the Holy Spirit can lead someone to Christ. I said, well, how should I describe it? And he said, you could say that Chuck Colson came to Christ in my driveway. That would be okay.
A very humble spirit. True of him. Any other stories that you'd like to share with us?
There's another one I'd like to share, Rink, again, in these classes that we did eventually at Gordon College, Gordon Conwell, Northeastern, MIT, Harvard Business School. These seminars in great demand. Because he was the retired CEO of a defense company, there were some students who wondered, can you be a Christian and also CEO of a weapons manufacturer? And there'd always be some student at the third or fourth session who would be bold enough to raise their hand and ask him, sometimes very directly, how could you be a Christian and run a weapons company? The first time that happened, I thought, oh no, this is terrible. What's he going to do? And he just said to the student, I understand your question completely. It's a question everyone should ask, whatever their kind of work is. Does this work really serve the Lord? And he said, my feeling was, I wish there were no war in the world, and I wish my company was just out of business because there was no need for weapons. But because our country needs a strong defense, I feel it's my duty as a Christian to make sure our soldiers have the best weaponry possible when they're put in harm's way for their country. You might disagree with that, and I completely respect it, he said. But I just thought I'd let you know my answer to your question. I was just so amazed at the humility and conversational nature. We tried to connect with one student who had a genuine question, even though it was kind of pointed.
Oh, that was my experience with Tom. He'd answer every question as honestly as he can. In fact, a portion of the book Born Again by Chuck Colson alludes to the night that Tom met with Chuck. And it's very clear that Tom said, ask the Holy Spirit to come into your life. And he was very humble. It wasn't Tom who led him to the Lord. It was the Holy Spirit who led Chuck Colson to the Lord. And both men were very outstanding apologetics for Jesus Christ and the gospel. Any further stories you'd like to share?
I've got one story that I was really touched by. One of the older gentlemen who was engaged with Marketplace Network had lost his wife. And I was kind of amazed at the way that he seemed to have walked through that. And I said to him, would you mind being part of a Marketplace Network event where you might just share some what you just went through? I said, I just think people could really benefit from that. And I thought, where can we hold this? And Tom was there and he goes, do it at my house. Okay. So I did a promotional email to the Marketplace Network people. And I said, hey, come over to Tom Phillips' house and I get to hear some stories from this gentleman. And so we all pulled up into his long driveway to his house, and he walked us into his living room there. He was dressed very casually. He sat on his easy chair and he just sat down as if he was just a participant, didn't have anything to say. And he just sat there and it was just like we were one of the clan. It was a really moving night because the subject matter was really touching. And then Tom just chimed in and added some words of wisdom. That was one of my favorite events in all the years that we did things at Marketplace Network. That was really special.
He was certainly understated at all times. Well, I thank you for sharing these moments. Any last words?
I miss Tom.
I miss Tom too. He was such a great encourager and friend, model, mentor. I miss him.
I miss him as well. And he had a great sense of humor. Of course, he was also very competitive. Did either one of you see that competitive spirit in him?
Many times, I remember the times he had where it was tough to get to the Tuesday morning breakfast because of weather or whatever. He shouldn't be driving, but that didn't stop him, man. He was coming. I mean, he made a commitment. I'll be there. When he made a commitment, he stuck with it.
He did stick with it. Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate both of you. And I look forward to seeing you at future